Welcome to Exodus Youth Worx on CYC. I have with me this week George Noir, who is a youth worker and who was one of the founding members of Exodus some 14 years ago. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
We're going to discuss how the organisation, as it is now, was dreamt up 14 years ago. We had a conversation having come back from South Africa, mission with Antonius, and the conversation went like this.
So I think it went something close to, I really liked Africa. I had a very good time there. Lots of excellent experiences and sort of some really beautiful Christianity. I've got a lot of friends who haven't seen anything like that. Is there any chance we could replicate that? Or is there any way we can do something like that for some of the guys that I knew that weren't regular attendees of church?
Yeah, so they more or less disengaged with church life?
Yeah, for one reason or another. Like they just weren't as committed to the Christian practice as they probably should have been.
And back then you were at university, from memory, doing teaching?
I was studying, I was finishing my teaching.
So no direction of youth work at the time?
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all. I was pretty keen to get into schools. Like I was studying to be a PE teacher, and I think the appeal for that, for me, was more the sports aspect rather than actually hanging out with young people aspect. But as soon as I became a teacher, and obviously because of my work with Exodus, that sort of evolved to me being at school was more about the young people as opposed to sort of
the teaching
or the content that I was.
So after that conversation, you and I rocked up to a park at about 8:30 at night. It was a bit cold from memory.
Yeah.
How long did we stay there?
So so you came with about 10 minutes or 15 minutes of structured conversation or conversation starting things. I remember it was that beautiful picture with Jesus holding the man who was sort of slumped over, and he had a hammer and nails, and that was the first ever EXO talk that you did, and you spoke about it very briefly. I think it was about 5 or 10 minutes. And what ended up happening, we ended up having an open discussion with the 5 or 6 people that were there that lasted about 2 or 3 hours.
2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. We went home at midnight.
Yeah.
And then we did the same thing
every
week.
Yeah.
Every week on a it was a Monday night.
It was. It started off on a Monday.
Yeah. And then we did that for a little while, and then it got colder and colder and colder, and some nights were rainy.
So we started, I'm pretty sure it was around May.
Oh, I thought April, but April, May.
Okay, so around May, and I think come September, October, it got very cold.
And the conversation in Africa, we started it there, but we more or less cemented it here in 2002. We kicked off in 2003 at Tempe in Sydney.
That's right.
And then by winter time, we did 2 years in the park, meeting every Monday night. Yeah. Numbers went from 4 or 5.
Oh, some stages towards the end of the park, we were at about 40 or 50
people.
Yeah. The park. The park was we were bringing in about maybe 40 people. Yeah. Towards the end there.
And a diverse group of people.
Very different. Yeah.
And then we ran out of space.
Yeah.
And then there was a building across the road, and they would find us gathering, and they said, "What are you doing out in the cold? Come inside."
So there was a beautiful lady by the name of Norma.
Who passed away.
Who did pass away, who was lovely, and she accommodated for us, I think. After it was 18 months or 2 years in the park?
At least 2 years.
Okay. Then she took us in, I remember. It was, and even in the boat shed, it was, again, gatherings of 40, 50, 60 people sometimes. Like we'd fill up that whole
room. Yeah. It was massive.
Yeah.
And it wasn't till sometime after that we decided that we would try and rent. Do you remember the fear we had?
$300 a week.
$300, and 6 of us said, "Gosh, that's $50 a week. We have to pay rent to accommodate these lost sheep." At the time, we didn't like the term.
I still don't like the term.
No, and
I still don't like the term.
But they were sort of just people out there, just people gathering,
people being people who are dealing with issues.
Yes.
Like everybody, but who maybe aren't dealing with them as successfully as some others.
Yeah, and looking back now, knowing what we know now, I think if we knew what we knew now, we may hesitate in dealing with the issues that we were faced. Yeah. Do you remember the first, I don't know, the top 5 issues would have been drug use?
Obviously, drug use, educational issues, or people who don't have sort of like who are disengaging with their education.
They dropped out of school, or they were just asleep all day.
Yeah, so lots of people who have who had family issues, so people who weren't getting along with their parents for whatever reason, or not able to be in their sort of environment.
They'd left home and they were living on their own.
Yeah, so them. And people, and I think we're seeing more and more of this, but I mean, even initially it was people who don't have a lot of direction, don't know what's next in their life, sort of cruising through without...
Identity too has a lot to do with that. We had people that were half Egyptian, half Australian, mixed marriage type people, from kids from mixed marriages.
And towards the end of the boat shed, there was, like I said, maybe 60 people at everything, and you know, anyone from 18 years old through to about 25 at the time, and it was people who were successful in their careers but were struggling with something else, and people who just had no idea. It was a very diverse group from memory. And don't
forget the mental illness. So we had depression and anxiety issues.
And it wasn't spoken. Now, thankfully, mental illness has become something that people discuss, something that people understand a little bit better, or something that we're dealing with or tackling. In 2003, when this kicked off, depression was a bad word.
Yes, and our people would never think to see a counsellor or you know, psychiatrist for mental illness or anything like that.
But if we go away even from our people, I remember my understanding, and I was education trained at the time, so my understanding, if you go to see a counsellor, there's got to be something fundamentally wrong with you. Like and I guess I was probably like if I'm the subsection of sort of the people that we were dealing with, going to see a counsellor for me was very far away from where I wanted to be.
Yeah, we might take a break and look at some photographs. We've got a slideshow for you of those early years, and we'll come back in a minute. Okay. Do you remember some of those photographs?
Of course. Of course, there's some very familiar faces, people that are still with us till now. And then some that we haven't seen in a little while as well. Like it's
yeah, and some are now staff like yourself.
Yeah.
So you've gone from volunteering as a servant, then you came on board.
I think before the volunteering as a servant, I think Exodus served me for a long period in the beginning. Like I think, even though I was sort of a servant in the beginning, I feel those early years in the park and in the shed. No, I think definitely Exodus was giving me a lot more than I was sort of able to give it.
And I think we can, we all agree at Exodus that everyone, including myself, have a part of us that's broken.
Yeah.
And it serves all of us through serving each other.
And again, I think our community, like I think society, and specifically our Coptic community, we have really learnt to see that a little bit more. People do carry issues. We like
Luggage.
everybody.
Luggage.
Yeah, there's nobody void of problems or issues, or whether it's economic or financial, or family or sort of social. Everybody's carrying something, and that's right. So we all show up a little bit broken.
But it's through the sharing, or you'd get a young person saying they were struggling with this, and then someone else in the room would go, "Oh my gosh, that's how I feel," and there was a community immediately gluing together because of like the situations were the same for them.
It's unbelievable how powerful that can be for a bloke. So I can speak on behalf of myself. For a young bloke who wasn't really sure, which way to go and what to do, and to hear somebody else suggest that they're in a similar situation,
powerful,
is very powerful for me. So as soon as I realise that what I'm dealing with is common, and I can share my experience with somebody else, and if they've come out the other end of it, they can tell me sort of how they did, and we can help one another that way. It's a very powerful tool. Which
is, the first step of cognitive behavioural therapy. It's that awareness of this is where I am, and maybe I'm a bit uncomfortable with that, and I'd like a bit of direction. And if others are travelling with you, okay, let's go.
Yeah. So CBT and any other sort of therapy, outlining your goal is very important. Outlining where you want to be is very important. And I think the commonality between my issue and other people's issues, and when we discuss that, I think that puts me in a platform where I can now start discussing where I'd like to be, as opposed to just where I am.
Yeah. And organically, that's where the mentoring came on board, because as you guys grew older and you found direction, you were then pulling others with you.
I think that was probably my favourite period at Exodus.
Yes.
I think moving from, Deb's got this really cool video to show, and maybe we can talk about it later, moving towards, oh hang on, this bloke was me a couple of years ago, maybe I can give him a hand. Like I think, and that did come organically. That wasn't structured, that wasn't it
wasn't planned.
It definitely was. There was no blueprint for it. And
no.
I just remember the people coming through, or the people that had been there for a little while, automatically took a little bit of responsibility for mentoring those that were just coming in, and it was actually beautiful. Like, it was organic, and it really felt like how a community is supposed to operate.
Yes.
The people who are a little bit more senior taking the people who are a bit more junior under their wing, and sort of.
When you look back, and those photographs, we know those people, but you've gone into youth work and youth mentoring. We've got social workers. We've got social workers working with FACS, so the government body for young people.
It's incredibly fulfilling and an exciting space to be. So I think once, and I know I can speak for myself, once I got the taste of this helping stuff, like where you go out and you're lending a hand, and you've got skills that other people don't have, and they just need a boost. I think once you get there, and sort of the rush that comes from assisting those people, and sort of and the friendships and the connections that you make, and I don't know. I know for me there was really no alternative. After that feeling, there was really no alternative as to sort of what I'm going to do for work. Like I was going to do this forever.
So you shifted from, you finished your education, diploma in education? Masters, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And then into?
So I finished the Masters of Education, went into, I did a diploma in community services, a diploma in youth work, And I did, so I was working in the youth work sector for about 4 years on and off, in different roles. So yeah, like from adoption and fostering to working with children with severe
outreach.
Yeah,
you did outreach for
I
a
did,
while?
or with severe sort of behavioural issues in crisis accommodation units. So I did a fair bit of youth work, and then I've now recently moved into an education space where I train youth workers and I train community service and like staff. So I train that qualification now at TAFE and at Open Colleges and another training organisation.
And looking back now, because we look back on 14 years, I clearly can see, and I'm sure you'll agree, that Christ had a purpose and a plan. Without a doubt.
I don't think that could be doubted. And I mean, and I think a little, like just moving on from that, I think Christ has held Exodus in his hand definitely from day one, as far as I can see. But in the meantime, those that have served Exodus, and again I can speak on behalf of myself, I'm very aware that I'm being looked after by God as a result. And yeah, like Christ has moved Exodus to where it's supposed to be. It's open. He's opened doors. He's closed doors. He's moved us around, and I feel a similar thing for myself. And I know, I know other servants of Exodus who can say the same.
There are a lot of us now.
There are.
I mean, from 5 in a park to through our doors every year, we're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 young people stepping through the door.
Yeah. Pretty awesome.
We could not have dreamt that.
No chance.
No way.
No chance. That park meeting initially, I think if somebody was to say or ask us before the park, where do you see this going? I'd probably say the 6 or 7 people that are coming, I'd like us to be very good friends and to support each other in a Christian walk.
And that's it.
And that's what had somebody asked me in 2003, what do you want to do? Or 2002, whenever it was, like, what do you want to do? That's what I would, that's what I'd say. And now look at us, like it's...
We have to pause, that's the end of this program, but I hope that you can see the gathering story of Exodus, and George will be back with us and we'll continue the story. Thank you for joining us on CYC Exodus Youth Worx.